So the title of my message today is Awaken Joy. Whew. So there will be some reflection questions along the way for each point. So just get your phones and your notebooks ready, all right? Okay, so when I first started writing this message about joy, I began by asking myself and my friends around me what makes us happy. So first on the rank, we have some results from them, okay? So first on the rank, we have good food. Woo! Okay, so just shout out to the service ops team because they spend like 5 to 10 minutes just looking for photos because there are a group of foodies over there, okay? Woo! So good food is probably something that many of you can relate to. And second on the list, we have when I spend time with my friends. Oh, which is very sweet because many of you share about your friends when I ask you this question. Okay, and the next point is watching cute animals. So, woo, okay, I just had to include my favorites. Okay, so cute animal videos. Some of you can relate to that. Okay, and next on the list we have for fellow working adults. When we are on, I'm not saying it yet. When we are on undisturbed leave, okay, special emphasis on undisturbed. That's the word. Okay. And next on the list, we have social media, TV, drama, Netflix. I think some of us can't live without Netflix nowadays. And last on the list, which is one of my favorite, is baby pictures. So I had to ask Rebecca for permission to put this photo because I really wanted to include Zach in my message today. So, we humans, we aren't really that different when it comes to what makes us feel happy. We all enjoy a good day off, we enjoy beautiful things, places, we enjoy awesome hangouts with our friends. So why not take a moment right now and just jot down briefly, very briefly, what a perfect day looks like for you. Okay, briefly, okay? No 10 pages long, just short points, okay? Okay, I'm curious to know what everybody has written. So maybe after gathering today, just turn to our neighbors and share with them and have a day out together, perhaps. So for all of us here, we all assume that life should be happy with the occasional bits of sadness. But if we think about it deeper, joy is quite a far stretch from the way most people live our lives. And bringing it back to our context right here and now, so this past year and a half, I think we have all felt more times of sadness or any emotions but joy. For the youth, this is your time to explore, to hang out with people, to try new things, but that has been taken away from you. And for the adults, some of you have been stuck in the loop of work, and by taking away interactions, we are more alone than ever. And some of us are having an identity crisis where we are really questioning what's our purpose in life and what we want to do and be. Some of us may have drifted from our friends. We may have faced problems at home. And in church, we are not able to hang out together. We are not able to have camps, have events like laser tags, and a huge element of fun has been taken away. And you may start to really question yourself, what is it that's making you stay committed to God and the people here? But I believe there's still something great that we can discover in this season of our lives together, and to make joy one of our most important pursuits of our increasingly anxious generation, simply because it is important. Joy is important because it makes us resilient. And the basis of this discovery came from a study done by Barbara Fredrickson, a professor at the University of Michigan, called the Broaden and Build theory. So the Broaden and Build theory describes the form and the function of positive emotions, including joy, love, interest, and contentment. So these positive emotions broadens an individual's momentary thought action repertoire. So joy sparks the urge in us to play, interest sparks the urge in us to explore, contentment sparks the urge to enjoy the moment, and love sparks a recurring cycle of each of these urges within safe, close relationships. So the broader mindsets arising from these positive emotions are contrasted to the narrowed mindsets sparked by many negative emotions, for example, specific action tendencies like attack or flee. So in summary, when positive emotions broaden our mindsets, they lead individuals to pursue more effective coping mechanisms for negative experiences. So it helps us to bounce back stronger in life. So I want to share an amazing story about Sheryl Sandberg, which is the CEO of Facebook. And when she lost her husband unexpectedly in an incident, she didn't expect joy to be the pursuit she leaned into. And in the book, Option B, she describes joy as a discipline. She started playing the piano again after 30 years and created new habits with her kids. They started biking and have weekly family fun where one child chooses an activity every single week. She also lets the kids have sleepovers, which David, her husband, had not allowed because he felt that the kids who were 9 and 12 needed sleep. And she's even taken back birthdays, so first she started celebrating her own, which she used to only do so every 5 years. And she tries to make birthdays as joyful as possible, and on David's birthday, the kids play poker, which is their dad's favorite game. So Sheryl Sandberg, she started to embrace joy in a different way than she has before and what she has imagined. So isn't that really, really powerful? So in the Bible, in James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4, it says, "When troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." So the most joyful people are resilient, and the most resilient people are joyful. Joy gives us the strength to keep showing up even when times are hard. So we are all guaranteed setbacks in our lives, but joy is a discipline that helps us come back stronger than ever. And so today I want to share and inspire everyone to discover that joy in your life, a joy that's here to stay despite of everything that might be happening around us. So my first point for you is search for joy. So I believe joy is already present in our everyday life, but it takes time and it takes effort to awaken them. It requires action. And how do we begin by doing that? So firstly, it is to search for joy in the mundane. It is important and awesome to have dreams, goals, big things that you're working towards. But if we are only waiting to feel happy and accomplished when we finally arrive at those places, then really we are missing out on experiencing a huge part of joy in our lives. Because almost 60% of the average person's day is spent on routine and mundane things. We will have worked for around 90,000 hours in our lifetime. Hearing from the working adults here. And roughly 2,250 full days will likely be spent in ordinary ways. And that doesn't include the time spent traveling, queuing, waiting in lines, which we will spend close to 235 full days of our lives doing that. And all the other days doing necessary activities of being just a functioning human. And one of the huge problems we face in our pursuit of happiness is what we refer to as the tyranny of when. So the idea that we will only be happy when something we always hope for finally happens. When I get into my dream school, when I get into my dream course, when I get a better job, when I make more money, when I find a partner in life. And the problem is those whens often never come about so quickly in our lives. And the antidote to this is the belief that you can do something about your happiness. That it isn't something you were born with or just happens, but something you can actively discover and create. So for all of us, we face mundaneness in school, with our work, with our relationships, and for some of you here, even in church, with ministry or serving, it is a real thing. It is normal to feel dread, to feel tiredness, to feel disconnection from time to time. But this is when we need to ask ourselves the question of why. Why did I choose to do this in the first place? Why did I choose to get started with the passions that I'm pursuing now? What made me decide to have a relationship with God or to be a part of TiVo's community in the first place? And why I'm asking you these questions is to help remind you to stay true to the purpose of why you're doing what you are doing. When things get a little mundane and boring, stop and ask yourself if there's anything you can do to rekindle that passion again. It can be a shift in your mindset or simply taking initiative to change up the way that you have been approaching things. And perhaps sometimes we are in situations where we do not really have a choice of changing things up. We can't change how our school systems run or how our work situations are like. But you can ask yourself this good question. If I choose to get my current task done well, whether it's school or work, what bigger aspiration or values of mine will it support? And for all of us here, not only can we search for joy, we can also start by being a joy. Being a joy and actively creating joy in our lives. So when you're meeting your team to serve, don't you just enjoy when it's a fun atmosphere to be in? You know, there's still the same amount of work to be done, but it's so much different just coming in and enjoying your time and doing work together. So don't just wait for your IC to hype you up or wait for that one friend in the team that's always the cheerful one, but take initiative to be that person today. Or in your friendships or at home, take up the initiative to suggest ways to change things up, whether is it going for a family hangout or just doing something small to encourage your friends, even if it's not a big occasion. We can all do something to brighten up someone's day through little ways. And mundane is also doing the same things over and over again, but it's in these small things that greatness can happen. So before the historic one small step for man moment, Neil Armstrong and his fellow Apollo 11 astronauts, they sat at desks in a classroom to learn. They went on site to do actual training. And this is the funny part. They spent countless hours using a small shovel in the Arizona desert to create the muscle memory to be able to take a sample of moon rock. So isn't that really, really awesome that it's in the small things that greatness can happen? And for us, it's in the day-to-day, seemingly mundane and small conversations that our relationships with people, with our friends are built. It's taking time to pray and to talk to God every day, reading our Bibles, that our faith is built, where God can work through our ordinary moments and create greatness. So I want to encourage you to not give up when things get mundane. Search for joy and be a joy, because sometimes it's in the mundane that great things can happen. And the second point is search for joy in the hustle. So remember when I began this message by sharing what makes us happy? And the funny story was when I asked my sister Caris, what makes you happy, sis? She actually answered work. And how many of you can relate to her? Oh no! Yes. So I also believe in the importance of finding work in the hustle, in working hard. Yes. Woo. So if your ultimate joy only comes from relaxing, and not having to do any work and just hoping for a day that you can be free, then we have a problem. Because life will always require work. And the working adults say? So in the Bible, we read about Jesus performing miracles. He resurrects the dead. He walks on water. He basically does amazing stuff, But how many of you know that Jesus is also a human like you and I? He's fully God and also fully human. And before he began his ministry when he was 30, he lived and he worked like any one of us. So for some of our youth here who are at a stage of figuring out what you want to do in your lives, or adults who are thinking of doing something more aside from just your jobs, I want to encourage you to find something that moves your heart. Something that you can be passionate and hardworking about. Our hustle should be purposeful and intentional. And take risks and be open to opportunities. Perhaps in your life you have experienced some closed doors, but be open to try new things and you may discover something that you never thought that you would enjoy doing. But as we step on the pedestal of hustling, we also need to frequently stop and ask ourselves the reason for our hustle. to ask ourselves, who else apart from myself is going to benefit from what I'm doing? Because for Jesus, the real joy in the hustle came from people, from relationships and connections restored. Jesus traveled, he met and he counseled people, he gave teachings to the crowd and spent time with his disciples and people, but he wasn't doing it to be influential. He was looking out for individuals. In Luke chapter 19, verse 1 to 10, the Bible talks about Jesus in Jericho. So there were a huge crowd, but Jesus notices Zacchaeus, the tax collector on a sycamore tree who desperately wanted to see him. In verse 5 to 7, it says, when Jesus got to the tree, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, hurry down. Today is my day to be a guest in your home. So Jesus was walking through the crowd looking to transform individual lives. And I believe it is a powerful act when we can give our best to do and to commit to something that is not just for ourselves but for others. So we're going to round off this point with a question to reflect on, and I'll give you a moment to jot down some thoughts briefly. So the question is, what are some mundane moments in your life that you need to search for joy again? So just take a moment and think about it and jot down some thoughts quickly. And the second point that I have for you today is make room for joy to stay. So as we take steps to discover joy in things and experiences in our lives, we also need to learn to make room for joy to stay. So one of the awesome messages that Pastor shared during our recent ministry training was about tension and balance. PC shared that in order to love and serve God well, we must learn to hold the tension and balance of worship and ministry, rest and hard work, self and others. And in the same way in life, we must learn to hold the tension and balance of the good and bad that happens. And that takes maturity. Because life is never going to be perfect, even with Jesus. We all face issues at school, at work, at home, in life. We face stress, disappointments, problems, and struggles. We might not be able to resolve every single problem all the time, but we can begin by taking small steps to intentionally clearing away distractions and to make room for joy to be a part of our lives. And we're going to delve into this in a practical way today, and I hope that it'll be something that will be helpful in the process. So the first point is to take care of your body and your mind. You know, when we don't feel well physically, it's hard to feel well spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And taking good care of our bodies is an important way to find and feel joy in our lives. So make healthy changes in your life, and it can make a huge difference in your mood and confidence. You know, choose one thing you can do today to take better care of your body. And mental strength is also just as important. You know, replace negative thoughts and talks with positive and realistic thoughts. And many of us are susceptible to what we call a negativity bias, which is our tendency to not only register negative emotions more readily, but also to dwell on these events. So the bias means that we feel the sting of a rebuke more powerfully than to feel the joy of a praise. And in almost any interaction, we are more likely to notice negative things and later remember them more vividly. So as humans, we tend to remember bad experiences more than good ones. We recall insults better than praise. We think about negative things more frequently than positive things that are happening in our lives. And we respond more strongly to negative events than to equally positive ones. So for example, you may be having a great day at school until a friend makes an inconsiderate comment that frustrates you. And you then find yourself thinking about it over and over again the entire day. And when you get home from school and someone asks you, how's the day? You know, you will say that it is a bad one, even though it's generally good despite that one negative comment from your friend. So for all of us here today, you know, learn to control your emotions so they don't control you. Some of us either let our emotions run wild every time we are upset, or we are the type to ignore it completely. But instead today, learn to build up your mental strength and learn how to deal and sit with these uncomfortable emotions. Learn to reframe the situation and stop negative talk that doesn't help. And secondly, it is to document small moments in your life. So the beautiful thing about documenting the good moments of our lives is that it gives us an opportunity to feel that joy all over again. Both when we were first writing it down and later when we look back what we have recorded. And it is a great way to feel and express gratitude for the things that people and God has given us. And it can help us work through painful experiences to find healing and find joy. So regardless of how you choose to document it down, the very act of doing it can help you find and make more space for joy. So for myself, I have recently started to journal at the end of every single week. So I will write down a few things, incidents, people, and things that I'm thankful for and also why. And I initially planned to do it as an activity every single morning, but I found that it was just too hard to keep up with, and I always ended up not doing it at all. And journaling at the end of every week works for me because that's exactly the day when I'm about to start complaining about Monday and about work. So I changed the habit up by, I changed the habit of complaining up by replacing it with writing things that I'm grateful about, and also just going back and rereading what happened the past few weeks. And I realized over time it really helps me to feel motivated and to be happy on the things that I'm working and currently growing in. So find something that works for you. For some of you, it could be taking time off, it could be going to the nature, it could be finding a friend and taking the initiative to chat with them, to make time to hang out with them. Find a way that works for you and create a habit from there. And lastly, it is to create healthy boundaries. So in order for us to allow joy to stay in our lives, we've got to make sure we create healthy boundaries that protect us and our well-being. We all have experiences that break us from time to time, but that's when resiliency comes into play. But resilience is also about never falling victim to the matters that shouldn't shatter us. For some of us, maybe the constant stream of negative news is really contributing to a major stress in your lives, or just constantly reading negative things that your friend posts up on social media. Or perhaps for some of us, it could be our friends, the people that we hang around with that often lead us into gossiping and negative talks with one another. Or maybe certain habits and addictions that we know we should stay away from, but we are not doing so. So it's not always about eliminating them completely from our lives, but we can learn to create healthy boundaries, say no when it's time to say no, change out our habits, and work our way to make joy a discipline and habit in our lives. And most important of all, make room for God in your lives. Because God is a giver of joy and He does so freely. So in Psalms chapter 16, verse 11, it says, "You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever." So make room for God not just in your time, but also in your mind and in your heart. When you make time to be here for gathering in person, also make room in your mind for God to be able to speak to you. Put away the distractions that's in your mind before you step into church. And make room for God in your heart. When it's praise and worship, make a decision that you're going to stay focused and connected to God and ask Him to speak to you. So make room for God to speak in your lives, to transform your hearts and the way you see things. So around this point, we are going to have another reflection question and just take a moment to also jot down some thoughts. So the question is, what can you do to make room for joy in your life? It can be either one of the points that I went through earlier or any other ways that you think could work for you personally. And finally, my last point for today is share your joy. So a quote by Mark Twain says, "To get the full value of joy, you must have someone to divide it with." So joy is one of the treasures that paradoxically multiply whenever they are divided. When we share our joy, we don't lose it, but we actually see it growing bigger and stronger. And that happens because just like love, joy means connection and shared happiness with others. And sometimes I do question what Jesus means when he say that we will find joy in him. How exactly do we experience that joy? I know many of us definitely find joy in our hangouts, in our laser tag, in our camps, but prayer time and quiet time, we're not so sure about it sometimes. When do we and how do we actually experience that joy? And I think that when we reflect deeper, is when we are inspired and loved by Jesus to do something bigger than ourselves. When we are doing something and when we are building something that's not just about me, myself, and I. It might not be something that's within church. It could be something that God is inspiring you to do for your friends, for your family, for your community, or for the world. God wants us to have joy. He wants us to be happy and be able to enjoy good things. But only when we are able to make the decision to put down our own self-centeredness, then can we experience the wholeness of joy that God talks about. So we all know the story of the rich young ruler. In Mark chapter 10, verse 17 to 27, it says, "As he went out into the street, a man came running up, greeted him with great reverence, and asked, 'Good teacher, what must I do to get eternal life?' Jesus said, 'Why are you calling me good? No one is good, only God. You know the commandments: don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. Honor your father and mother,' he said. 'Teacher, I have from my youth kept them all.' Jesus looked him hard in the eye and loved him. He said, 'There's one thing left. Go sell whatever you own and give it to the poor. All your wealth will then be heavenly wealth, and come follow me.' The man's face clouded over. This was the last thing he expected to hear. And he walked off with a heavy heart. He was holding on tight to a lot of things and not about to let go. So the point of the story here is not Jesus telling him to sell his possessions and to be poor. But the young man was so attached to his wealth and his belongings that he was not willing to give that up to follow Jesus. And we will never know what happened to this rich young ruler at the end of the story. And if he hadn't chose to go back to Jesus, he would have still led a good life, well provided for. He would still enjoy the good things and have joy in his life with his privilege. But what he'll be missing out on would be the wholeness of joy and life that Jesus would and could have given to him. He would have missed out on the intimate friendship and relationship that he could have had with Jesus, discovering the true potential in his life, which was what he was really called to do. So in our own lives, are there areas where we have been too fixated on what we can hold on to, that we are missing out on experiencing a real joy and connectedness that could be shared with others? So I remember for myself, there was a period in my life where I was constantly worried about school, about problems in my life, the things that I do not have and the things that I'm struggling with. So I was still praying at the time. I was still reading the Bible, doing my quiet time, all of that, but there wasn't much change that I was really experiencing in my life. I was just going through the motion of doing my quiet time, praying, and coming to God with the things that I'm either unhappy about or I'm worried about whenever I do that. And I remember this one time when I was really at the peak of my worry and my anxiousness, that God spoke to me very clearly to stop worrying and instead start to pray for the people around me. And thankfully, I did listen in, and I began to think about my friends' situations, what they are going through, how they are doing in their lives. And I began to realize that many of them, they are going through the same worries as me about school, but they are also facing problems and issues at home. And I began to reflect how this entire time, when I've been just so stuck in my head, I haven't even checked in about my friends and try to find out how they were coping. And a week after that, I began to text some of them. I checked in how they are doing. We started connecting with each other. We went out for dinner and started building a stronger and better friendship from there on. And that in turn helped me to fixate less on my problems, but also finding joy in a stronger connection with my friends and the people around me. So ever since then, I've always tried to make the effort to not just pray for my own needs in my prayer time, but also taking time out to think about my friends and be able to pray for them. So if you relate to this today, I want to encourage you to take a deliberate step to care and love someone, and you'll begin to receive that back in return. So think of sharing your joy with others as a constant process. It is not just a single act of kindness. It can be walking into a room and instantly making people feel good. It can be coming in with a great attitude, saying something nice to the person next to you to encourage them instead of complaining about your day. And how many of us just really love being with people like that because they just light up the room wherever they go? And on the other hand, there are people that bring down the joy in the place immediately when they are here. Oh, they're not saying anything necessarily, but their attitude, their sulky faces just changes the atmosphere drastically in a bad way. And we all don't like it when that happens, right? And it's not about whether we are having a great day, whether life is going well for us, by simply making the decision to create a better atmosphere wherever we go. And sharing your joy also means sharing moments of happiness with others. And there are times where we fall into the unhealthy habit of comparing with others in order to feel happy. And the story I want to share about is the Prodigal Son in Luke chapter 15, verse 11 to 32. And I'm just going to do a quick summary of the story if you have not heard it before. So there are two brothers in this story. The younger son demanded an inheritance from his father, then left home and went to live in a far country. He soon squandered all of the money that his father had given him and found himself starving. So he resolved to go home and beg for his father's forgiveness and asked his father to take him in under his roof as one of his hired servants. And when the younger son returned home, his father saw him in the distance and ran to him and welcomed him warmly. His father ordered his servants to fetch him the best robe and put it on his son and to put a ring on his hand and shoes on his son's feet. He then ordered them to prepare a fatted calf for their meal so they can eat and celebrate the prodigal son's return. And the elder son was outside working in the field. So when he discovered his brother who had run off had suddenly returned, he grew angry and refused to go in to meet and greet him. His father came out and asked his son to come in and join them, but the elder son was still upset. He told his father that he had served him loyally and obeyed him all these years, yet he has never had a fatted calf or a feast laid on for him and his friends to enjoy themselves. So when I read this parable, I too can sometimes relate to the older son. When he's coming from a complaining heart, okay? Everybody just give me the look, okay? But if we reflect deeper, we realize that this story is not about how others are treating us, but how we are internally only focusing on ourselves and our needs. The elder son was so fixated on what he deserved, what he should receive from his efforts given, that he neglected and forgotten about the best thing that he could have received, which was his relationship with his father, and everything else in the household that actually belonged to him. And I sometimes wonder when I read this story, how different would the end of this story be if the elder son had decided to be a part of this moment of happiness with his father and his younger brother. If he had chosen to share the joy and what he owned, perhaps he would have experienced a greater joy in the moment rather than living with bitterness and insecurity in his heart. And maybe that's how some of us feel in this moment. We feel happy only because we think that we are better than someone else. We feel happy only because we own more than them or we are doing better in life than them. But why not let's switch that up and learn to share moments of happiness during your interactions with others. And create an atmosphere in your friendships where you guys are not just always sharing and complaining about the bad things that are not going right in your lives, but also all the good things that are happening. Find something small that you can start doing today, big or small, not just for your own joy, but also for someone else's joy. So our final reflection question for today is, what can I start doing to share and bring joy to someone else's life? So for this past year or so for myself, it has been a challenging time as well. And I too, find myself getting into the mundaneness of just doing things, getting things done, and going through life day by day, and that is it. It's very easy to fall into this loop of just doing and working. And it's scary to me because the joy that we once looked forward to might not even happen right now. The joy of a day of hang out with your friends after working, the joy of exploring places freely, the joy of looking forward to what's going to come in the future. Right now, when we think about the future, we think about the changes in our regulations. We think about what's going to come next, and we are anxious about it already. But when I was praying during one of our pre-gathering prayers, one of the things that really kept coming to my mind when I was praying was how we're going to spend Christmas and we're going to spend this coming year with joy. And we're going to go through it with joy, not because we are blatantly just ignoring everything that's happening around us. And we are not just happy because the Bible says that as Christians we should be happy. We're happy because we are making a deliberate choice to make joy a discipline in our lives. And we are going to choose joy. We're making a choice to make room for the joy to stay even when things are not going our way. And we all have a choice to discover joy in our current circumstances. And we are not just going to allow the default to determine how we should feel and what we should do. And most importantly, we have joy because we have one another. We have each other in our CG, our teams, our ministry, the people that are sitting next to you right now, to keep going together. And we have joy because we have God as our anchor. So whatever that you are feeling today, I want you to just open your hearts to God and to people, but also make a choice today to decide on joy. And make it a choice that you can make and to allow yourself to be able to feel joy once again.